too. I think I heard Travis is watching us on the live stream, so
hey, Travis!
He's a military brother that him and his family are relocating to Mississippi. His wife's still here, and he has to watch it through live stream. So somehow our love can reach through that little thing there. I don't know. So our Bible's Luke 22, and we're going to start reading just a little bit here in verse 1. Now, the feast of unleavened bread, called the Passover, was approaching. And the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12. And Judas went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. He consented and watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over when no one was present. Then came the day of unleavened bread on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover." "Where do you want us to prepare for it?" they asked. He replied, "As you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him to the house that enters, and say they enter their house. The teacher asked, 'Where is the guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large room upstairs, all furnished. Make preparations there." They left and found things just as Jesus had told them, so they prepared the Passover. There's a bit of a transition, a segue, a change here as we're coming to the very end of Jesus' life, the end of his ministry. We're in the last days, the last week. And we're getting ready and we're heading towards, as we study this, and Jesus' life was heading towards the Passover and the Passover meal. Jesus would have celebrated the Passover every year of his life. Passover was this massive celebration. Hundreds of thousands of pilgrims, people from the countryside, people from other countries, came to Jerusalem for the Passover. That's where they had to go. And that Friday of this week, between 4 and 6, every Passover lamb had to be slaughtered there at the temple. Things had changed a little bit. They didn't do it outside of their house. They didn't put it on the doorframe, but slaughtered at the temple, and that blood ran into these drains, just filled these drains that ran out of Jerusalem as they slaughtered thousands and tens of thousands of lambs. Of course, the lamb, those animals could never really take away the sin or the killer angel to pass over Israel. The true sacrifice, the true lamb was coming. And yet something had to happen first. It says that the chief priests and teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus. At this point, they hated Jesus. They were jealous of him. They were angry. They were filled with greed because he was hurting their marketplace. He cleansed the temple twice, cost them a lot of money. He was preaching against their system of greed and money-making in their hearts. And these leaders, it wasn't about truth. We find out it wasn't about justice. It just was greed, jealousy, and just flat-out hatred. They were searching for some way to get rid of Jesus. And it's interesting, it says here, but they were afraid of the people. Because at this point, they didn't understand the crowds. The crowds were fickle. A few days earlier, Jesus had entered Jerusalem, and we call it Palm Sunday, but they cut palms. They sang, "Blessed Hosanna." They sang from the Hallel, Psalm 118, the psalm. And Jesus came in riding on a donkey, and so they're a little disturbed, they're a little upset. It says they didn't arrest him because they were afraid of the people. They were afraid of the people. They didn't care about justice. They didn't care about truth. They were just afraid of what the people were going to think. Now, for most of us, or all of us, we get a little like, man, how cowardly that they would be concerned about what people think in popular opinion. But before we get too angry, right, or before we get super judgmental about these religious leaders, we got to look at our own hearts. Yeah. Very often we don't say what we really think. We don't speak up because we're wondering what does everybody think? What's popular opinion? Yeah. What is the crowd thinking? And we can be afraid of the people. Yes. We can be afraid of our neighbor. We can be afraid to just speak what is true, what is right, and what we believe, because it's not fashionable nowadays to be a Christian. Maybe it never was, but it's even less now, okay? Not that you've ever, became a Christian just to be fashionable. But it's less than ever. So we've got to look at our own hearts. It says in verse 3, and this is who we're really going to look at today for a brief time. It says, then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12. Judas went to the chief priests, officers of the temple guard, and had this discussion. Had some time here. Listen, I want to hand him over. I want to work this out. I'm done. I want out. And not just wanted out. It says they agreed to give him money. Also, money was involved. We don't know a lot about Judas. There's not a lot here in the Bible. But we know he was the betrayer. He was the one who betrayed Jesus. And the Bible talks about in the Old Testament that one of Jesus' close friends would betray him. Back in the Psalms. Him and Judas were close. He was tight. They spent 3 years together. Walking, living, Jesus teaching, camping. Hey, you spend just a weekend camping with somebody, you're going to get to know him. You know what I mean? This is for real. They spent 3 years. He was close, and Judas would now betray him. And a lot of times we're like, man, Judas, poor Judas, he was a victim. And the Bible says in James chapter 1 that no one is tempted. I think I may have it up here. There we go. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. Nor does God ever tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. There's been a lot written, a lot said. There's these apocrypha scriptures. These are books written way later than the Gospels. And people said maybe they're really the Bible, and there's stuff about Judas, and maybe people more sympathetic, and what was he really thinking? We don't know according to the true scriptures. But we know he was a betrayer. We know that he opened his heart up to allow Satan to work in him and through him. So, we're going to come back here, so we don't want to hold your place. But look at John chapter 13. John chapter 13... It says in verse 2, first evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. This idea of prompted, the phrase actually means to put into the heart. Put into his heart. Cardia is the whole phrase. It's ice. It's into his heart. So Satan was already putting things in his heart. Already dropping ideas. Already tempting. The thoughts, the things were going on inside of him. And then at some point he just opened himself up completely to what Satan wanted to do in his life. Judas was not a victim. Yeah, he was prophesied about. Yes, Jesus had foreknowledge. Jesus knew, and it says throughout, Jesus even said he knew one of you was a betrayer, and he knew who the betrayer was. But just having foreknowledge doesn't mean you make it happen, right? You understand that? Right. Just knowing something's going to happen beforehand doesn't mean you did it. You made it happen. If you have children and you tell your children, don't do something. Don't do whatever you do. Do not. The stove is hot. Do not go up and touch it. But if you see their hand going towards one, you're going to scream and yell. You didn't make it. You just know what's going to happen. It's like being on the top of a tall building and looking down. And you're at the corner, and there's a car coming this way, and there's a car coming this way. Same speed, distance, all those things. You know, whoa, they're going to crash. Right? I got an amen. But you know they're going to crash. You didn't make it. You just have foreknowledge. God didn't make Judas be a betrayer. God didn't fill Judas' heart with evil. Judas opened up his heart and allowed Satan to do it. He was not a victim. He is responsible. He wasn't forced to do it. He's responsible for his life and his actions, as we are responsible for our life and our actions.
Yes, come on, brother.
We live in a day and an age where just push it off. Oh, Judas wasn't. He was just, he's a victim, and God probably needed somebody to be the fall guy, and then very often we take that in our own life. I didn't do it. It's like, those of you who are older, if you're younger, even if you're older, you may not have heard of this guy. There was a comedian at his own show. His name was Flip Wilson. And he had this this actor was hilarious. It was Geraldine, thank you. And Geraldine would come out, it was Flip Wilson, and be like, her husband would be like, why did you go and buy another dress? That's the third dress you bought this week. She's like, well, it wasn't me. I was walking down the street, and I saw that dress, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to buy that dress. And the devil made me do it. And it goes on, no, the devil pushed me in there. The door opened, and the devil just pushed me in, and I didn't want to try. But the devil said, just try it on. There's no price, try it on. And so I said, I'll try it on. And I went to take it off, and the devil said, no, and wouldn't let me take it off. So because I'm an honest person, I had to pay for it, so I bought the dress, But it's hilarious, but sometimes we live our life, it's the devil. All the evil did. It wasn't me, it was the devil. You know what I mean? And it's somebody. I can't blame anybody else. It's somebody. Just, no, we're responsible. Come on. Each person is dragged away by our own evil desires. A lot of times as a married person, we want to blame our spouse, right? Early on in marriage, I was my wife. She's making me angry. She's making, I have no control over it. She doesn't. I can't imagine Angie ever making anybody in any way. She's bringing out all this deep, dark pride in my soul. No. Once I took responsibility. I always want to blame somebody else. Our parents. No, it really was our parents' fault, but that's, I don't know. As we're older, we take responsibility. Some of us have lived some very, very, very challenging lives. And our parents, there's some things there. But you reach age where we're responsible. Yeah. Judas was responsible for his own life. Look back in John 12. You can still hold your page. Eventually we will get back to Luke 22. But John 12, this is one. There's really a couple of glimpses that we see, get to look at Judas. This is a main one that really gives us an idea of what he was like, of why he was a betrayer. John chapter 12, verse 1, it says, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. This perfume, just so you know, was worth about 11 months' wage, almost a year's wages. So if you make $25,000 a year, you got $22,000 worth of perfume. That's some good stuff. You better smell good if you put that on. Better, you're single, you need to find an instant spouse. But Mary took this, and it says she took an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet. Poured it on Jesus' feet. And wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. What a scene. We know the end of the story. We know that this is special, that this is the end of Jesus' life, that this is Mary giving everything, pouring everything she has, sacrificing the most precious thing she has on his feet. I'm not worthy to do anything else on his feet. And then wiping his feet with her own hair. It's the ultimate in humility and sacrifice and brokenness and gratitude, right? Yeah. I just picture this and it just moves me to think of Mary doing this. And the smell wafting throughout that place must have been incredible. But, and there's some buts in the Bible, this is one of them in verse 4, but one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. Indignation almost sounds like it's righteous indignation. He wanted to take that perfume. That's a year's wages. That's a lot of money. And take the money, sell that perfume. And in his good-heartedness, Judas wanted to sell that perfume, get that money, and give it all to the poor. Not is right. You've got to read the rest of the Bible. Verse 6. Appreciate God who knows our hearts. Explaining. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Leave her alone. Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You always have the poor among you, but you'll not always have me. Wow. Someone who appeared righteous. But all that righteous, self-righteous talk was just veiling a heart filled with greed. Sounded so good, sounded so right, sounded like he wanted to help, right? But it was really a superficial, fake, lying, deceiving thief. He was taking little by little by little. Nobody's going to know. Nobody, if you skim a little off the top, nobody really knows. As if Jesus would even want an accounting sheet. Give me the balance. So, he would trust, but there's Judas taking a little bit and it revealed what was really in his heart. He was just covering up what was there. God knows our hearts, right? Yes. We've heard that. We've seen that. I've heard of churches, large churches in the South where they have an eye. I've never seen one, but I've heard about it. Maybe you've seen one. There's an eye at the back of the church, a big eye, And as you're leaving, so you're in church, you hear everything, then you walk, and there's the eye. And the idea would be God's watching you when you leave. You know what I mean? That'd be really cool if the eye moved wherever you went. Well, never coming back to this church. But the idea is, God knows. And as Christians, as disciples, as those who seek Jesus, sometimes we say a lot of things. We expound. Some of it's just self-righteous blabble. We're just covering up our hearts. We're not being real. We're not really being honest about what's inside. True Christianity, according to Jesus, according to the Bible, it's changing from the inside out. It's cleaning the inside of the cup. It's not saying all kinds of good religious things, and smiling, but inside filled with hate, greed, bitterness. No, that's Judas. That was Judas. He gives us a glimpse of what really, really is going on. And maybe us today, we're sitting there going, this is crazy that Satan entered him, whoa, I don't, the word to enter his heart in the Greek can be taken literally or figuratively. So we don't know. We don't know if it just filled his heart figuratively. We know he's filled with evil, and he opened that door. But maybe you're sitting here going, why are we talking about this mythical figure, and he had horns and a pitchfork? Those things are all things we've made up, we hopefully don't dress your kid up for Halloween. I was about to say that, dress your kid up. But I'm Satanist this year. That'd be great. But a lot of times that's how we view it. Like he's this mythical figure, and you dress up, and I don't know if that's real, and can he really prompt you, and does he tempt us? Well, if you wonder, you can do a little test. Take 7 days and just do your best. Think of your biggest struggles. What are they? Your pet peeves, your complaining heart, your anger, your lustful thoughts, or whatever it may be. Just for 7 days, don't do that at all. That's a week. That's for a week. Say, I'm not going to do that at all. And in fact, I'm going to do what's right. I'll try to read the Bible every day. See what happens. See if there aren't forces, you know what I mean? Fighting, just give it a shot. What's the worst going to happen? You'll be a better person, you know what I mean? It's not the worst. But if you want to feel something fighting against you, go for that. Let's look back in Luke chapter 22, where you're holding your finger. We don't know exactly, the Bible doesn't tell us exactly why Judas did it, but maybe, I'll turn to Matthew 22. But maybe it was simple, pure, unadulterated greed. Maybe that's what God is trying to say. It was just, he wanted out. He wasn't really believing anymore. He wanted this chance to get away, and he went, and he wanted money. He negotiated. He negotiated with these leading priests and Pharisees, and he got some money, and now it's time to get out. And maybe it was just greed. And we go, really? This is a guy who walked with Jesus? I've heard it put that the only other person that possibly could have been more evil as far as what they did was Adam. Go, what? Well, because Adam walked with God, the Bible says in Genesis chapter 3. Adam walked with God. Judas walked with God. Adam betrayed God, and Judas betrayed Jesus. Now, we know that Adam changed. Adam turned. Adam repented. But could have it just been simple greed? You know, there's a verse, I think I have Exodus. Did I put that on here? We're going to find out. Exodus 21. This is the Old Testament. It talks about, if it's about slaves. It says if the bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to the master of the slave. You go, well, why would that be important? Well, we know that Judas received 30 shekels of silver. That actually is, under Jewish law, the price of a slave. Price. That's a sad in and of itself. But that's what Judas received. To betray Jesus. Wasn't even much. Guys, I think sometimes we're too simple. We think, well, there was deeper reasons, and people try to contemplate this, and political reasons, and he wanted Jesus to step up and begin to take over the kingdom. We don't know that at all. It doesn't say that. Many people have walked away from God because of money. Many people skip the assembly of the body because they're working, because of money. They just this I need this. This is more important. They build their life around money. They build their life around things. It's just greed. It's greed. Remember that verse, the love of money. We misquoted. We say money is the root of all evil. The love of money. If money is the root of all evil, then we just need to get rid of it all. It's the love of it is the root of all kinds of evil. And it's true. And we see this in the life of Judas. Look down in verse 20. So they're there. We're going to talk about the Lord's Supper next week. But in verse 20 it says, in the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with mine on the table. The Son of Man will go as it has been decreed, but woe to that man who betrays him. They began to question among themselves which of them it might be who would do this. So now it's what we call the Last Supper. It's Thursday night. Remember that Jesus is going to be put on the cross Thursday morning, and he's going to die later that day between 4 and 6 when the Passover lambs. We'll talk about that next week and understand it hopefully in better detail. But Jesus is there, and they're having. Jesus washed the disciples' feet. He's sharing with them. They take communion, the first communion. They eat the last Passover. They take the first communion, and then he says, "Listen, one of you is going to betray me." And he begins to push. And he begins to push, I think, Judas to come out. You know, and why? Because the time has come. The time has got to come for Judas to come out with who he really is. And John says that Judas actually leaves, and it's night. He goes out into the darkness. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered him. So Jesus told him, what you're about to do quickly. But no one really understood why Jesus said this to him, since Judas was in charge of the money. Some thought Jesus was telling him to buy what was needed for the festival or give something to the poor. And as soon as Judas had taken the bread, he went out, and it was night. He gave him a little push. No one knew. Jesus gave no indication. Jesus knew. But the timing was coming, so he had to prompt Judas, and Judas had to go and betray him. The stress was building on Judas. He knew what he was going to do. He was looking for this opportunity. The deal was already made. He was watching, and now Jesus was pressing. Why? Because the time was coming. And Jesus was pressing. He wasn't saying, it's Judas. He just was pushing him, and Judas left and went out. I love what John says there. And it was night. And it was night. Darkness. The darkness had come. The light was disappearing. Judas went out into the darkness. Look down at verse 47. While he was still speaking, Jesus is now, in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's prayed several hours. That meal could have went on. A Passover meal could last anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. Then he goes out and he prays for a long period of time to get his heart right. He tells the guys, come on, pray so you won't fall into temptation. As he's speaking, it says in verse 47, while he was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus asked him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Judas was a fake, a phony, a deceiver to the very, very end. Only now, as they leave the garden, or they're in the garden, I'm sorry, as they're leaving the prayer time, does everybody realize it's Judas? And you understand what's happening is Judas is coming, and I think I put the verse here, Aaron, that helps us understand it. The betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man, arrest him. Going at once to Judas, we get a little more of what he said. Greetings, Rabbi. Do you understand what's happening is the signal had already been arranged. The deceit was set up. So Judas wants to come in and act like everything is okay with Jesus. Greeting him as Rabbi. I'm sure he said it loud. Because that was the signal. But he wanted Jesus to go, look, it's not me. I'm just greeting you. I guess they followed me. It's pitch dark. There weren't street lights. There was no light. How are we going to find Jesus in this massive garden in the dark? Judas knew where they met. And Judas, a liar, a phony, a fake, to the very end, couldn't even come up. Didn't have the courage, the guts to say, I'm tired of you. This is the man. No, he has to go, greetings. And he's smiling to the very end. Wow. Guys, remember, Christianity is changing from the inside out. It doesn't matter if we're smiling, saying the right things. It doesn't matter. Judas was arrogant. He was arrogant. He wanted to fit in everywhere with everybody. I'm not saying any of us we're Judases today, but part of him can be in us, right? Sure. Part of him can be in us. We can smile and yet have an arrogance that we're not real, we're not open. We just talk about people. We play both sides. Both sides, the world and Christianity, and we're not just real about who we are and where we're really at. That's the heart, the spirit of Judas. This goes out in Matthew chapter 27. Understand, next week I really wanted to talk and cover kind of Judas, because this can be discouraging if we talk about it every week. We'll look at it today and we'll move on next week. But the last part of Jesus' life here in Matthew chapter 27, verse 1. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw this, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us, they replied. That's your responsibility. They knew that. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. Chief priest picked up the coins and said, it's against the law to put this in the treasury since it's blood money. So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. Judas comes, and the Bible says that he was seized with remorse. He finally realized what he had done. He finally realized, oh no. And something came over him, this sense of self-hatred, this sense of guilt, so much so that a thief, a greedy, lying thief, took his money and tried to give it back. And they said, whoa, you're responsible at this point. Even these evil priests and Pharisees, they said no. So he took the money and just threw it into the temple and he took off. A lot of us wonder why he was seized with remorse. Did he feel so bad? Did he repent? Did he change? Well, we know at the end it was not truly godly repentance. He didn't turn back to God. Yeah, he felt bad. But the bad was more like, I have failed. I can't handle it. I hate myself. I hate what I've done. Everybody hates me. I've betrayed all my friends. I hate myself so much. I'm so bad. I'm so evil that I'm just going to go and end my life. He was arrogant, prideful, dark to the very end when he took his own life. He couldn't open his heart up to forgiveness. He couldn't open up his heart to ask for forgiveness, to ask for help. See, being a Christian is about being humble and admitting, yeah, we're a mess. We need forgiveness. We need mercy. We need Christ. We need help. Judas hated himself. And his self-hate culminated in him taking his own life. See, God is about mercy. God is about loving us to the very end. We have hope. We have hope. We need to open our hearts and yes, admit what's really in there, but seek forgiveness. Seek mercy. Seek the love of God. Today we have hope because of Christ. So that we're not going to be like Judas. Not necessarily he took his own life. It's a horrible thing. Not just that, but to live a life of being phony, fake, deceitful, greedy on the inside, but sounding self-righteous on the outside. Today, as we look at our hearts, let's find hope. Let's find humility. Yes. And let's find forgiveness through Jesus Christ. Amen.